My chemistry teacher accused me of faking seizures for attention while he was secretly drinking vodka during class. After he lost his license, he spent months stalking me and researching how to trigger epileptic episodes as revenge. My stupidity was my chemistry teacher, who was convinced that my life-threatening seizures were something I was doing for attention. I was in his class when I first had one. I was writing down an assignment when my eyes suddenly rolled back, my vision exploded, and I started twitching like that one streaming platform. That's all I remember. When I came to, I was on the floor with my lab partner Marcus kneeling beside me. Everyone had surrounded me and were really worried. But then Mr. Stupidity stormed over with his face bright red. He was one of those teachers who always wore wrinkled dress shirts and had permanent coffee stains on his tie. He glared down at me with pure contempt and said I needed to stop disrupting his class with my theatrical performances. I tried to explain that I couldn't control what happened, but he was already writing me up for disorderly conduct. The second time happened during a demonstration. I was watching him mix solutions when I felt the familiar tingling in my fingers that meant an episode was coming. I tried to warn Marcus, but my jaw locked up and I fell sideways off my stool. My arm swept across the lab table, sending pens and notebooks flying. Mr. Stupidity actually kicked a textbook across the room in frustration. He sent me to the principal's office with another write-up claiming I was intentionally disrupting instructional time. My dad had to leave work to pick me up and he was livid. Not at me, but at the school for treating a medical issue like a discipline problem. He'd been noticing me spacing out at home and having these weird moments where I'd stop mid-sentence and stare at nothing. We scheduled a neurologist appointment, but Mr. Stupidity had already labeled me his problem student. He moved my seat to the back corner so I would cause less distraction when I decided to act out. The third incident was the worst. We were doing a lab with corrosive acids, and I was carefully measuring sodium hydroxide when I felt the aura hit, that strange smell of burning metal that always came before a bad episode. I tried to put the beaker down safely, but my whole body went rigid and I crashed to the floor. My knee hit the table leg on the way down and several bottles of chemicals wobbled dangerously. Marcus lunged forward to steady them while yelling for help. Mr. Stupidity completely exploded. He started screaming about how I was endangering everyone with my fake seizures and creating a hostile learning environment. While I was still twitching on the floor, unable to speak or move properly, he wrote out a 3-day suspension. He made me wait in the nurse's office until campus security could verify I wasn't on substances. The neurologist finally ran an EEG that week and discovered I had temporal lobe epilepsy. My brain was literally misfiring electrical signals causing partial and tonic-clonic seizures. No wonder I kept having seizures during stressful situations or when exposed to fluorescent lights. The doctor prescribed anticonvulsants and wrote a detailed letter explaining my condition and necessary accommodations. When I returned to school with my neurologist's documentation, Mr. Stupidity scoffed openly. He grabbed the papers and said, "How convenient that you suddenly have a medical excuse." He made air quotes around the word medical like I'd somehow faked an EEG. He told me I still had to serve the suspension and make up for all missed work, including redoing the lab I'd sabotaged. During my makeup lab session, I noticed Mr. Stupidity's acting strange. He kept going to his desk drawer and taking long drinks from what looked like a coffee thermos that he immediately locked away. His face was flushed and he kept stumbling over his words. He marked several correct answers wrong on my lab report and had to keep checking his notes. The room smelled weird too. Not like coffee, but something sharper. 3 weeks later, I was taking a test when I heard a massive crash from the front of the room. Mr. Stupidity had collapsed behind his demonstration table and knocked over an entire rack of test tubes. Glass shattered everywhere and chemicals started mixing on the floor, creating toxic fumes. His face was gray and he was barely breathing. Someone pulled the fire alarm while I called 911 from the wall phone. The paramedics found a flask of vodka that had rolled out of his desk drawer. Turns out Mr. Stupidity had been drinking throughout the day to deal with stress from grading and lesson plans. He'd been mixing vodka into his coffee thermos and was basically hammered every afternoon. Combined with the fumes from the spilled chemicals, his blood alcohol level caused respiratory failure. The investigation revealed he'd been intoxicated while teaching for months, which explained his erratic grading and violent outbursts. The school board revoked his teaching license, but that's all that happened. No charges were ever pressed, and Mr. Stupidity was now free, and somehow he thought I was the person to blame for everything. The first sign something was wrong came 3 weeks after Mr. Stupidity lost his license. I was walking home from school when I noticed a familiar figure sitting on the bus bench across from our house. My stomach dropped. There he was, wearing the same wrinkled dress shirt from his teaching days, just watching our front door. When he saw me looking, he stood up and walked away quickly, but not before I caught the expression on his face. Pure hatred. I told my parents about it that night over dinner. My mom frowned and suggested maybe he was just passing through the neighborhood. Dad was more concerned but figured it was a one-time thing. After all, what could he really do? The man had lost everything because of his own drinking problem. Surely he'd move on and rebuild his life somewhere else, but he didn't move on. The next week I started getting weird phone calls. The caller ID showed different numbers each time, but nobody ever spoke when I answered, just breathing for a few seconds before hanging up. Then came the letters. Plain white